Hi, I'm Xander.
I'm Emerson.
I'm Olivia.
We're from the Santa Barbara Middle School Teen Press, here with...
Trevor Hall.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
How did you discover the catering refugees in Lebanon?
Well, I have a business partner named Thomas Morgan, who's a wonderful director, and he had done another film called Waiting for Mamu. And the people that had supported Waiting for Mamu called him up and said, we've got another amazing story about a group of women refugees who are trying to launch a food truck company. And he jumped on a plane and was there the next day. So we love finding great stories.
What inspired these refugees to start a catering company?
I think it's the same thing that inspires us all to live a better life. I think they looked around and they saw the obvious challenges that were in front of them, and instead of accepting them and retreating, they decided to charge forward and create a better life for themselves and their families and their kids. And it was just that entrepreneurial spirit that was just driving them for something bigger and something greater.
So why do you think that cooking has been so empowering for these women?
That's a great question. I think cooking has been particularly empowering for them because it's one of the few things that unites us all. We all eat, we all have cultural norms around food, we all gather around tables as a way to nourish each other. And so I think for them it was a way to start a business that went beyond their characteristics as refugees or as women or as Lebanese or as Palestinian or Iraqi. They were just people with making food and serving it to others, and that attracted people to come and not just support them because of who they were, but also come around the food and as the great uniter.
How far along in creating their catering company were they when you first discovered them?
That's a good question. They were, when we first came along, they were about a year into their catering company, and it was successful, and they were seeing how important it was to the women who worked with them, so they wanted to expand it. So we came in about a year into the catering company when they had their Kickstarter, and then followed them for another about 2 years while they tried to find a way to buy a truck and outfit the truck and get it out into the streets selling food.
How many trips to Lebanon did that mean?
For our team, it was many. I'd have to go back and count, but I'd say there was probably 25 trips all told. And we're not done because we like to go back and make sure that we're having a positive impact and leaving the place better than we found it. So.
How does a film about refugees in Lebanon that have a catering company affect to everybody and relate to everybody?
Well, I think one of the bigger things we hope to do is dispel the myth that refugees are people who are in need or in trouble. They're people that have been driven out of a country to no fault of their own. They're not people who've been involved in the wars or in the battles. And they're talented people. They're smart, interesting, and ambitious and entrepreneurial. And instead of rejecting them from the places where they need to be accepted, we hope this film applies to all of us so that we realize that there are some wonderfully talented people who need new homes and need to be embraced by new communities. So it's in today's world, it's very important. And as you go out to the polls when you become 18 and you start to vote, hopefully you'll remember this film and think that you want to vote for policies that's welcoming and forward thinking about how we try to solve the refugee crisis.
And how do you think we can make it so when we think of refugees, we don't think of terrorism, but instead we think about people that are working on their own and they're trying to really make a better life for themselves?
I think the way that we can dispel the myths about refugees being terrorists is to do what you and I are doing right now, which is to get to know one another.
Sure.
I think once you meet someone, it's very hard to stereotype or generalize about them. They become individuals. And so I think that the important role that film plays is to bring people together who are very distant in geography and beliefs and ways of seeing the world, and allows us to have that human connection. And once we have that human connection, I think we can understand that terrorism, as they say in the movie, has no nationality, it has no religion. It's a thing all to itself.
Awesome.
What was the most surprising struggle you learned that these women and all of the refugees you learned about faced in Lebanon?
I think the most surprising struggle that we discovered when we started making this movie about the refugee situation is that when they come to these new places, you would think, well, why don't they just eventually make enough money and leave and go somewhere else? But you imagine when they arrive, they are from a different country. They're not from the country that they're in. They have no papers, no documentation, no nationality that they can claim. So they don't have passports. So they can't cross borders. And then because they're considered a refugee, there are many countries like the United States that won't let them in. So one of the surprising things was just how stuck they are wherever they end up. And it was never a place that they chose to go, and they wouldn't have left their home country if it was not for the war that was happening around them. So the most surprising thing was just the practicality of how hard it is to leave a refugee camp once you get there.
So the women in Soufra faced many roadblocks throughout the film, especially in getting their food truck. So were there ever moments such as when they were denied the health permits to get their food truck, when you thought maybe that was the end of the story and that it was just time to leave? And how did you handle that?
That's a great question. Yeah, you're right. They faced many, many roadblocks on their way to get this truck. And there was a long time, actually, where we thought we were going to have to come up with an ending for the movie other than them getting the truck, because it looked like it wasn't going to happen. And we never gave up because they never gave up. And so I think anytime we ever even had a second thought about whether we could keep going, you just look at how hard they're working and the fact that they never give up. So we were going to be in it to the end, and we're still not going anywhere. We're going to keep going back there until we see that we've left it better than we found it. But yeah, there were definitely times where it was unclear how it was going to end.
Speaking of never giving up, throughout the film, the women are always smiling and laughing together. How do you think they seem to maintain a sense of hope and joy?
That's another great question. I think that the reason you see them smiling and laughing so much in the film is that a lot of the time that we were there, the company was already in motion, and they had the friendship between them and the camaraderie between them, and I think they really savored that love that they shared between them. So the challenges of their world around them, they've been there their whole lives, so they understand struggle. But when there's something sweet and sort of delicious moments to share with friends, I think they just absolutely relish them, no pun intended.
When you think about refugee camps, you think about kind of a temporary home displacement, but they'll go back to a more place that they can be for a longer period of time. But multiple individuals in your film said that they had lived their whole life. What do you think it's like to live in a refugee camp your whole life?
I can't imagine what it's like to live in a refugee camp your whole life. I think we certainly have communities in our country that are suffering deep poverty. You think of some of the urban neighborhoods and even some of the deep rural parts of our own country that are equally as poor and probably have a similar sense of being stuck forever in their situation. I've not experienced that in my life. I've been very blessed and frankly just lucky to be born where I was at the time I was. But for them, I just think there's a relentless spirit and a belief that they can create a better world. And so I don't think that they're stuck in the mindset of being a refugee. I think they're stuck in the mindset of creating a better world around them.
And would you say you usually see a lot of people in poverty that are very happy? Do you think that it's just that every little thing that they get is just it changes their day, it changes their month? And how do you think that affected like the women in Lebanon?
I think that a lot of times we see people who are in areas of great poverty and there's still great joy. And I think that whether you have lots of money or very little money, life is a choice. Joy is a choice, happiness is a choice, and I think that there are just people who, despite whether they have everything or nothing, will find joy wherever they are. I think it's just a common search that we're all on. So I think that you see it there, and maybe it's just more surprising to find it in dire circumstances, but I think we all seek joy and hopefully find it.
Finally, if you could give us one homework assignment with regards to refugees, what would it be?
If I could give you one homework assignment in regard to refugees, other than having all your friends watch Soufra, of course, which you can find at soufrafilm.com, I would just seek out stories of everyday refugees and understand that their experience could be your experience if you just happen to be born somewhere different. So I'd say seek out stories of individuals who are refugees to get beyond the news and really understand the human side of the story.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That was awesome. You guys are great. Yeah, good job. Nice job.